What's up everybody? My name is Tony Obe and I'm shooting this video live from the Google office in downtown San Francisco, California. So earlier this year, I wrote an article on Medium about how I got my job as a designer at Google. This turned out to be one of the most popular articles I've written so far, so I figured why not try to make a YouTube video about it and see whether people like it. So this is the story of how I got my design job at Google and how you can do the same. For the past 4 years, I've been leading the design at a startup called Osmo. Earlier this year, I felt like I had enough. I felt like I did pretty much everything I could do at that company, and I wanted to work on something different. So I revamped my portfolio, and I applied to all of the biggest tech companies in Silicon Valley. In the end, I interviewed at 4 of the biggest companies, that is Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple. I got 3 jobs offers out of 4, and I ended up joining Google. I couldn't be happier about this. I think all of these big tech companies consistently rank among the best places to work for in the world. The wages are just through the roof. The work conditions are amazing. You get all the benefits you can imagine. You get free breakfast, free lunch, free dinner, free everything. So if you're a designer and you want to do the same, this is the video for you. In this video, I will be breaking down the full process of applying and interviewing at the big tech companies in Silicon Valley. Let's get to it. The process took about 2 months back to back. It was pretty much the same for every company. I break it down into the 5 following steps. Number 1, reaching out. Number 2, the phone interview. Number 3, the design challenge. Number 4, the on-site interview. And number 5, receiving your job offer and negotiating for your salary. Number 1, reaching out. So one of the big mistakes that I did when trying to work for these big tech companies is applying online. So for example, Google had always been the dream company for which I've always wanted to work for ever since I moved to the Bay Area 5 years ago. I've applied to their website every single year and never got a single reply from them. I never heard of anybody who got a job from applying online. The best way to do this is to reach out to a recruiter. Now, there are many ways to do this. The first one is LinkedIn. So for example, recruiters from Apple and Facebook had already reached out to me on LinkedIn. So I just wrote back to them. LinkedIn is by far the most popular website for job search. So I highly recommend that you have a great LinkedIn profile because this is one of the main ways that recruiter will reach out to you. As for Google, as I said, I constantly applied on their website, never got a single reply. So this time I did things a little bit differently. This time I reached out to an ex-colleague of mine who now works at Google, and I asked him to give me a referral. He gave me one, and the very next day, a recruiter from Google reached out to me. Referrals are the single best way to get a foot in the door of these big tech companies. Look into your network and try to find anyone who works at these companies. And if you do, ask them to give you a referral. This is the best way to get in. Now, as for Amazon, I gave a talk at XRDC last year, and one of the project lead from Amazon was attending my talk. She came to me afterward, we had a little bit of a chat, and she promptly invited me for an on-site interview in Seattle. The lesson here is to put yourself out there as much as possible. This can be anything from sharing your portfolio online on websites such as Dribbble or Behance, or sharing your thoughts about design on Medium articles or in YouTube videos such as this one, or also attending and even participating in tech conferences. The more you put yourself out there, the more you increase your odds of being seen by a recruiter. Number 2, the phone interview. Once connected, a recruiter will usually want to have a quick phone call with you to understand a little bit more about yourself and about your background. Now, this should be very informal and should not be stressful at all. The recruiter simply wants to know more about you. They will ask you questions such as, who are you? Why are you looking to change job? Why do you think you would be a great fit for their specific company, and why are you interested in their company? And what type of project do you want to work on? At this point, the recruiter will also ask you for a portfolio and a resume that they can forward to the rest of the design team. In the description down below, I have added examples of my very own portfolio and resume, which I use to get my job at Google. So feel free to have a look at them and see how they compare with yours. You might also be asked to do additional phone interviews with other people from the design team to talk a little bit more about your portfolio and about your projects. At this point, because most of my experience had been about designing at smaller tech companies and startups, I was super worried that I would have a hard time convincing the recruiter that I could be a great fit for a bigger company. In the end, this wasn't a problem at all. Recruiters are mostly looking for great design and positive impact, and I had plenty of that. So if that's the case for you, you should not be worried at all. Number 3, the design challenge. Before bringing you for on-site interviews, some companies will ask you to complete a design challenge so they can better assess how good you are. Not all of the company will ask for that. So for example, personally, Google and Apple asked me for a design challenge, but Facebook and Amazon did not. Both challenges were unfortunately unpaid. Google gave me the option to choose among 3 design problems to solve. Now, I can't disclose what they were exactly, but they were about redesigning everyday things and they were completely unrelated to Google. As for Apple, they asked me to redesign one of their developer-facing apps. Now, some people have an issue with that because there's been cases in the past where the designer did some design challenge, he didn't get hired, but the company ended up implementing the design challenge anyway. So it's important to be mindful about that, but in this case, because this was Apple, I didn't think this would be an issue at all. So I did the design challenge regardless. I ended up passing both design challenge. Here's a few tips. First one, make an impression. I remember back when I was at Osmo, there was a designer that everybody was super excited about him joining the team. We gave him a paid design challenge, and what he gave back was good, but not so great. And everybody kind of felt that he could have done a much better job at it. So we didn't end up hiring him. So my recommendation is to go above and beyond. If the recruiter tells you this is an 8-hour assignment, take 12 hours. If they ask you for only wireframes, give them fully fleshed out user interface. If they ask you for user interfaces, give them a fully interactive prototype. When you go above and beyond, it shows that you really care about joining the company, which is great for you. That being said, do not spend too much time on the challenge either. If you tell the recruiter that you spent 30 hours on the challenge and what you gave back was not so good, this is a huge red flag for you. It's basically telling the recruiter that you can't deliver quality work within a finite amount of time. So work hard, but also be mindful about where and how you spend your time. Another recommendation is to show that you can handle the full design process from beginning to end. So for example, with Google, I did pretty much everything. I did some user interviews, I did some wireframes, some user interfaces, I did a prototype which I used to test with real users and then implemented the feedback, and I even did a little bit of logo design and branding. As for Apple, as you know, they care a lot about the small details. So once I was done with the UI, I spent twice as much time polishing everything. I even did a fully animated motion prototype to show off some of my motion design skills. In the end, both recruiters told me that they were very impressed with the quality of my deliverables, so this is the type of feedback you're looking for. Number 4, the on-site interview. At this point, if everything goes well, you will be invited for an on-site interview. Now, I got to visit the Google and the Facebook headquarters in Mountain View, California, and I can tell you this was amazing. If you get to visit any of these big tech companies' headquarters, you should absolutely do so. You will be mind blown by the quality of the offices, of the facilities, of the decoration. Everything is just top notch. Facebook and Amazon reimbursed me for the full cost of transportation to the interview. Apple and Google did not, and I didn't ask for it. But I'm pretty sure that if I did, they would have reimbursed me as well. So all 4 of the companies followed a similar process, which is, first, you show up around 9 to 10 a.m. Then you do a portfolio presentation, a general interview, a lunch buddy interview, a technical interview, a design review, and a whiteboard exercise. You walk out of the office around 3 to 5 p.m. Now, this is a full day of non-stop interviews. This is by far the most stressful and the most exhausting part of this entire process, but don't worry, I got you covered. In the next video, I will be breaking down the full process of passing each of these individual on-site interviews. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss on the next video. If everything went well, at this point, you should be receiving a job offer. If you do, congratulations! This was by far the most stressful part of this whole process. Now it's time to start talking about your salary expectation. This can also be a little bit stressful, and I find that the best way to deal with this is to have a great idea of how much you should be asking for. So for this, I have 3 tools I can recommend you. The first one is a website called levels.fyi. Now this is probably my favorite website because it allows you to compare the different types of salary expectation depending on which company you're joining, depending on your role, and also depending on your experience. You can also check out websites such as glassdoor.com, which is also great because it lets you compare the different salary expectation depending on your location. Finally, there's an app called Blind, which is an anonymous messaging app that is widely used in Silicon Valley. On this app, you can explain your current situation, and people will tell you exactly how much you should be asking for. For graduate students, a total compensation between $100,000 and $140,000 seems to be about the average. I highly recommend that you ask for at least 6 figures, particularly if you live in Silicon Valley, because this is one of the most expensive places to live in the world. Another recommendation for you is to get competing job offers. This is necessary to get a higher starting salary. So for example, personally, because I had 3 competing job offers, I had a lot of leverage to negotiate for a higher salary. In the end, the final offer that I got was 45% higher than the first one I got. I'm not going to explain how to negotiate for a higher salary because, quite frankly, this could be an entirely new video on its own, but instead I will be linking into a Medium article called How I Negotiated a $300,000 Salary in Silicon Valley, and I really recommend that you read it because this is extremely informative. Here's a few closing thoughts. First, don't get too fixated on joining a single company. Now, this is the mistake I did with Google by trying every single year to only apply to this company. In the end, yes, I did get the job that I wanted at Google, but looking back, I was so lucky to get it. The timing was just perfect, and a lot of small details ended up working out perfectly for me to get this job. If only one of those details had not worked out, I would not have gotten that job. So understand that joining any of these big tech companies involves a lot of luck, and luck is a numbers game. So the more you apply to different companies, the more you increase your odds of being successful. I also recommend that you look beyond the big tech companies. Companies like Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Google, they're the most popular because they are the most well-known. And thus, everybody's trying to apply to them, and the bar for joining is actually very high. But I can promise you that these are far from being the only companies that are doing great and exciting work, especially if you live in Silicon Valley. There are thousands of smaller and lesser-known companies that are doing equally interesting work. The same goes for money. Yes, the big companies provide with incredible wages, but in the end, in Silicon Valley, most of the people who I know that made the most money did so by joining smaller, lesser-known companies in a higher-up position at the perfect time. In the end, Silicon Valley provides some of the best opportunities for a career in technology. So keep an eye open, don't get too fixated on a single company because you could be missing out on the biggest opportunities of your career. Alright, that's it for the video. I really hope that you have enjoyed it. I really hope that you have learned something from watching this. If you did, feel free to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel because I will be posting more content like this in the future. You can also follow me on social media, so you can follow me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and on Medium. On Medium in particular, I share a lot of content about having a career in tech and in design, so I recommend that you have a look at this. That's it for this video, and see you in the next one. Ciao!